Are we good to go,
Sherry,
Sherry?
thumbs up, Sherry. All right, Mr. Juby, I think we're good to go. Just unmute yourself and we're ready to go.
All right, is Christine and Ashley there?
Yes.
All here.
Like to bring the special board meeting June 8th to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Daniels,
Present.
Ms. Thomas,
Here.
Mrs. Tucker,
Here.
Mrs. Kitson,
Here.
Mr. Juby.
Here. Purpose of the meeting is to enter into executive session to discuss negotiations and personnel and to accept employee retirement resignations and any other matters that may come before the board. Recommend adoption of agenda as presented.
Make a move to.
Yeah, are we?
Second.
adding it? Do we have to change the agenda for open discussion? Or no, is everything taking place in executive session?
No, we're doing the, go ahead, Al, I'm sorry.
No, so we have a discussion with Ms. Hamilton as number 3. And then we have executive session right after that,
Okay,
after the first 2 actions.
all right.
Who made the motion to? adopt?
Mrs. Kitson motion, Mrs. Thomas seconded.
All right, discussion, roll call.
Mrs. Kitson,
Yes,
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
yes,
Mr. Juby.
Yes. It is recommended the board accept the retirement resignation of Lori Cole, Secretary for the Director of Pupil Services in Central Office, effective July 1st, 2020, after 34 and a half years of service with the Garfield Heights City Schools. Lori Cole is retiring after 34 years. This is just an ad lib to it. The Garfield Heights City Schools. Lori has worked in many departments and schools during her time with the district. She's retiring as a Central Office Secretary, working in the Pupil Service Department. We wish Lori and her family all the best in her future endeavors and thank her for her dedication to the students and staff in our district. Any discussion?
Need a motion in a second.
So moved.
second,
Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Daniels,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
yes,
Mrs. Kitson,
yes,
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Juby.
Yes. Item 2 is recommend the board accept the retirement resignation of Deborah Wolski, Building Secretary at Maple Leaf, effective August 3rd, 2020, after 29 years with the Garfield Heights City Schools. Deborah Wolski is retiring with 29 years of service with the Garfield Heights City Schools. Deborah has worked in many buildings in her district during her time. She is retiring as Principal Secretary of Maple Leaf Elementary. We wish Deborah and her family all the best in the future endeavors and thank her for her dedication to the students and staff in our district. Our motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
yes,
Mrs. Kitson,
yes.
Mr. Juby.
Yes. Next is discussion with Miss Yolanda Hamilton. Chris, you want to introduce her to everybody?
Certainly. Ms. Hamilton has worked with the district this past school year as our diversity consultant. And given what is transpired with the death of George Floyd and the subsequent protests that have gone on throughout the nation, and it was I thought and at least one board member thought it'd be a good idea to have a nice discussion about all of this. I asked Ms. Hamilton to come and facilitate that discussion. A piece of that is going to be Ms. Hamilton, Mr. Crooks, and I did work on a first draft of a statement for the Board of Education. And obviously the board has can add, subtract, or talk about that as well. So I'll let Ms. Hamilton take it away.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good
I just like to first start off by saying, that the last couple weeks have been very tumultuous for members of our community, particularly amongst the African American residents and families in our community, seeing all of the things that have been transpiring in the news. I think that in following suit with all of the school districts that have put statements out, I was made aware by Mr. Hankey of the school board's desire to also issue a statement to address some of these issues and to also reassure the community about the practices and things that the board is working towards and best supporting all families within the district. I would like to start off the discussion by first reviewing of the letter that we created as a framework for our discussion this evening. And I really would like to hear back feedback and for board members present on the call to share thoughts. I think when addressing the community at large and regarding with a statement like this, it's important to make sure that all of the board members are on the same page with their understanding around institutional racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also being on the same page in terms of understanding what are we currently doing. So what I would like to do is go through each paragraph and to then take a pause so that to give you the opportunity to chime in on how do you feel about the tone, and then to also make that personable in terms of your understanding or articulating the message that's being conveyed. Is everyone agreeable to that?
Yes.
Yep.
So we'll start off, and I will need probably Ms. Bailey probably can scroll as we go. So starting off with paragraph 1, on behalf of the Garfield Heights City Schools, the Board of thank you for making it a little larger. On behalf of the Garfield Heights City Schools, the Board of Education is compelled to share with the community our heartbrokenness. Our heartbrokenness and sadness over the death of George Floyd. As members of the Board of Education, we are working collectively to dismantle institutional racism through our unwavering commitment to racial equity in our own school district and society. We assure the community that as elected officials, we will continue to serve the community of Garfield Heights, and we are committed to creating a school culture that embraces and implements racial equity practices and will hold ourselves accountable to advance equity in our district. So I'd like to pause there, allow the opportunity for any thoughts and comments.
This is Millette Tucker. I am wondering, how do we go about including others that have
Also been, yes.
I know George Floyd has his death has really propelled us even further, but is there a way to include not everyone's name, but reference others that have passed away in similar manners?
So that was something that I was going to propose to the board about your thoughts in terms of mentioning other names. In my research across other statements that have been issued by other districts, some have also included the names of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. Some just included George and Ahmaud. So that would be up to your discretion regarding that edit. And so how does everyone feel about adding an additional name or maybe putting an additional generalization to acknowledge, George Floyd and others who have maybe succumbed to, et cetera?
Yeah, I definitely think we should include maybe a general statement about the others, but I think we should especially include the current incident that happened in Cleveland. I think that he should be mentioned.
Okay. And when you say locally, you're speaking Franklin?
Yes.
I have one question, Yolanda.
Yeah.
If we start naming all the names, can it come back to us as that we're forgetting somebody? And there'll be more, I don't know how to say it, more, like if you, like when you thank somebody,
Mhm.
you're always gonna forget somebody. Is it worth it to be more general or name names?
Right.
I'm looking for you for advice.
So I think that in the context of this being like a statement kind of derived from recent events, I think that it would be appropriate to maybe, continue to say over the recent death of members of our society like George Floyd, Ahmaud Marbury, and even locally, Devin Franklin, and the many others that we, I can figure out some edits and work with Mr. Crook so that it encompasses that we're not only referencing those individuals, but we are acknowledging that there have been many others who have also been the victims of racial injustice. And so that should cover us from that perception of leaving out names.
That sounds good to me.
I would like to include Brianna too. I mean, the three, I'm not,
Okay,
but George Floyd and Brianna, just because this is within what, 6 weeks, these three, it's
Yeah.
just one after another. And I think that it was just a culmination of all this, in my opinion, which I don't know if this is true, but as I see it, it's, one, then the second, then the third, and then locally things are happening. And I don't want to leave, again, you can't put everyone in there, but it just seemed like these last 6 weeks have really, or 2 months or that.
right.
These were ones that were related to police shootings. It's hard for me to see the letter on the screen, but one of my questions about the first paragraph, as we go throughout the document, will we begin to outline how the district is accomplishing the things that
Yes, we will. So
Okay.
I want to take a chance for us to kind of pause and go through the letter paragraph by paragraph as it builds up, so that to be the starting point for our discussion. And then we can, then I'm taking notes for any edits or anything that you want to be taken out, any revisions, or if it's fine, just so that Mr. Crooks and I are clear on making this as authentic as the voice representing the board. Okay, so with the second paragraph, what became evident in the community event for racial healing that took place on Sunday, June 7th, our citizens' voice was clearly heard, and that they expect a heightened level of accountability for what the Garfield Heights City Schools will do to keep each student safe, secure, and free from harm's way. So I thought that it was important to also include that, because we did have a Board of Education that participated in the citywide event that took place on yesterday. And I know particularly both Ms. Daniels and Ms. Thomas were present. And I believe that from the tone of the event that people were looking, there was a heightened level of expectation for accountability from not just individuals from the school district, but from the city leaders within the city of Garfield Heights as well.
Yolanda, so at
Ms.
that
Tucker was
meeting,
also there.
yeah, Ms. Tucker was
Sorry.
there, Ms. Hager, and Mr. Hanky all was in attendance.
With that first sentence, the our citizens' voice was clearly heard. Is there another way that we could say that? I feel like it almost should be voices, because it was more than one, and I know that citizens is plural, but is there a way to, to kind of just switch it up a little bit?
So just that the voices of our citizens were heard?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so
I mean, I wasn't at the event. I was actually in Ann Arbor with my daughter who finished residency, but there actually was no graduation for her. But People are feeling it even before this event, which I think culminated the feelings of the city and the school. But I think that these feelings were growing and people have been feeling it. So if there was a way to express that.
So the purpose of us referencing the event is because it was a result, it was really the first time of having individuals from Garfield Heights come together in terms of that diversity to address of racial injustice.
We did have the diversity last spring. I mean, there was something in the schools. No, I'm not sure how many members of the city.
Was that specifically to address racial injustice?
I don't think
No.
so. No. Okay. I'm just saying, I just want to make, people that weren't able to be there or prior to this event. This is, I think we've all felt the tensions and the inequities. And I think too, we wanted to do a statement before Sunday. So
Yeah, before the event. So I get what Ms. Kissen is referencing. I think we should most definitely reference the event. But well, what is clear is that event is not what is triggering this board to make a statement at this time. We were planning to, we had discussion about making a statement prior to Sunday's event. So
Correct.
I kind of get what Ms. Kissen say. I do think we should include reference Sunday, but Sunday is not what triggered the Board of Education to actually have a statement and a position. We're just so happen to be able to meet the day after that event, but discussion came about relative to us making a statement once Mr. Hankey presented to the Board of Education the statement that he was presenting with the interim superintendents. And then at that time, Ms. Kitson suggested that we all make a statement as the Board of Education, and there was an agreement, and then that's where we came about. So I do think that we should reference it, but it does, to me, and I can see it now Ms. Kitson's way, where it may read as if that's what triggered the Board of Education to make a statement, to put out a statement out, and that was not our trigger.
Correct. And in the discussion with Mr. Crooks, I think that we both decided that it was valuable to mention that because it shows how, again, some actionable items that there were people representing the school district that participated in this. So it moved beyond just the discussion behind closed doors and the planning closed doors, where we were visible in the community to continue to take in consideration. So we can come back to that and decide whether or not we would like to keep that or just plug that in another part of the letter. I do personally think that it is valuable to mention that or to reference that.
Could we just add a sentence before the what became evident?
Sure.
Yeah, because I think we do need that statement in there. Now I have to say, because I think what was very powerful, and just all the time that I've been here, just seeing the different aspects of our city being in one place on one accord, people from the school district, police department, council, mayor, faith-based community. It was really a very good representation of our community as a whole, so that the school actually participated and was a part of that. I think it's important that we do share this in our letter, because it was a big deal. I got a lot of feedback, especially about people seeing Mr. Hankey out and supporting it, and the superintendent coming out. So I think it's important to keep it in there, but I just don't want it to be read as if it was the reason why we're making this statement today.
So Ms. Thomas, what are your suggestions for that revision?
I just think that a beginning or introduction statement to that paragraph should just read something like, I don't know, just speaking to Christine's point of this is not the first time, or this is not the first discussion that we have, or this is not the first time that we've realized that this is a thing that we have to deal with. Let me think about it.
So perhaps it's just a simple referencing that, you know, as members of the board, we participated in an event for racial healing that took place on this last Sunday, and the message was, which was a culmination of discussions and et cetera that we have been working towards for a while. Or that's what you're, I get it. I understand what it is that you're trying to communicate, that you want to be communicated.
Yeah, like just something leading up to it, Ms. Riceland.
I'm sorry, Ashley.
Yeah.
Could we read through the whole thing first and then see where we're going?
But we will.
Yeah.
This is just this is a methodology that I use in training and facilitation practices. And so we will go through and read the letter as a whole, but there's a reason why I'm facilitating in this way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riceland, because I know it's a little choppy, but there's a reason why I'm going this way. So bear with me, because we'll get through this in a timely fashion, so that we all can have a meaningful outcome and be on the same page about things. Okay, thank you. So then we'll go down to the next paragraph. The Garfield Heights City School District has taken the initial steps to begin this process through the hiring of diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant who provides district-wide support and training for employees, as well as support in reviewing and creating equitable policies and practices. We have also introduced the role of Family Engagement Coordinator, whose focus is to ensure that all families in our district are supported by bridging gaps in communication between the district and parents, and ensuring that they are supported by removing barriers to accessing needed resources. While these roles are evolving, they demonstrate our efforts in moving things forward.
I have, Yolanda, I have a question.
Sure.
In your first sentence, it says the Garfield Heights City Schools have taken the initial steps. I believe we've taken these steps, not the initial steps. We've done this before with Michael Douglas before his passing, and then you take over. So maybe it should be something like, you're better at these words than me, but this has been in effect for at least 5-6 years, I think, maybe more. Am I right, Mr. Hankey?
Yes, I think maybe you could separate out that particular sentence. This is just a suggestion, and then the Family Engagement Coordinator is a new initiative, right? So for this year. So if the board, I mean, that would make some sense in terms of, how the things arranged. Go ahead, Mrs. Hamilton.
Taking the necessary steps to continue the process or continue advancing equity. Are we agreeable?
You got away with words, young lady.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just writing notes. And that way, so has taken the necessary steps to advance equity through the hiring of a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant who provides district-wide support and training for employees, as well as in reviewing and creating equitable policies and practices. We have also introduced the new role, because you said that's a new role, correct, Mr. Hankey? The new role of Family Engagement Coordinator, whose focus is to ensure that all families in our district are supported by bridging gaps in communication between the district and parents, and ensuring that parents are supported by removing barriers to accessing needed resources. While these roles are evolving, they demonstrate our efforts in moving things forward.
In sentence number 1, can we change the word through the hiring? Just so that it shows more longevity,
Okay.
And is the Family Engagement Coordinator, is it Family and Civic Engagement Coordinator? It's FACE. Somehow its acronym is FACE.
Yep. No, actually,
FACE.
you're absolutely right, Nichelle. That's the exact correct title. Family
Okay.
and Civic Engagement Coordinator.
Family and Civic Engagement Coordinator. Okay, noted. Okay, great. Okay, so moving down, Ms. Bailey, are you able to scroll down for us or scroll up? Okay. Okay, so this is paragraph 5. In addition, there are other initiatives that are underway to elevate our DEI work, such as Project Mosaic, a platform created to engage students as diversity champions, and our district-wide DEI, it should say DEI initiative, which focused on various facets of diversity, equity, and inclusion, including improving cross-cultural relations, inclusion for students with different learning abilities, and mental health. More importantly, we are working to create a revised strategic plan for the future of our district, which will include an equity statement to serve as the compass for our district's equity framework. In fact, one of the 4 pillars of our strategic plan will be diversity, equity, and inclusion.
If you could spell out DEI and then put in parentheses DEI, spell out the diversity, equity, and inclusion the first time, and then use parentheses wherever it shows up first in the document, because I'm not sure if everyone knows the acronyms.
Okay.
And I think you talked about it in the paragraph.
Yeah, it might be first. And it might be in parentheses above, I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Just a little thing.
It's a little big thing, Christine.
It's a little. Well, I just want to make it very clear.
Yes.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, and we understand that the next paragraph, paragraph 5, we understand that there are racial disparities within our district, and we are working to better understand the experiences of racial groups and identify strategies to addressing the existing disparities in our district. We also recognize that as we move forward in this work, it will require us as members of the board to remain vigilant in examining our own personal journeys and implicit biases that would have an impact on our practices, policies, and protocols. We acknowledge that this is required to effectively initiate and create structural changes in our district that challenge the status quo and support equity for each student. At the same time, we condemn violence and will not permit the communication channels of our district to be the arena for hateful or hurtful speech. We can all elevate and must lead by example. So this paragraph, I think, is very important because in the work that the school board is doing and striving towards and advancing equity, having that, communicating that as a personal commitment in your service as board members is something that the community to be reassured on. And it is a necessary part of the process in order to effectively move forward to bring structural changes. So what are your thoughts about paragraph 5? Do you feel that that's authentic? Do you feel that the board will take ownership for this if this is communicated publicly?
Okay. So this is my question. Do we really know as a district and a board the racial disparities that happen within our district? Do we really know what they are? Do we really know the impact of them? Have we even reviewed them? Have we streamlined them? I mean, we're sending out sending out a statement saying that we have it, but I do know in our work session, in our board retreat that we did, some of these things came up in that board retreat work session, and there was some gaps, even as board and administrators, that we really did not know or seem to know really the full picture of our district and necessarily the things that, I mean, I walked away, but we were on a pathway, and even in our next board retreat, you know, we're moving forward to get a better picture of that. But, you know, for me to make this statement, I just want to know, as a board member myself, you know, what racial disparities are we dealing with in our district? What are we facing with? Do we know as a board of education what is going on within our schools and how it's impacting education? I know some examples by being a parent personally, but do we know as a board, do we know as a district, do we know as administration if there are issues in our schools, if to what level they arise, and do we have safe places and spaces for our students to work this out, and do we have programs and stuff to really face this? Because I feel like sometimes as a community, we've really put some blinders onto these things. And so, and I'm new to the board, so these things may already be in place. So if somebody can just enlighten me before I can endorse that statement, that'll be helpful.
Prior to a board response, one thing I will say is that when we look at the racial disparities, not only the impact of students, but within the school board as the whole organism, I know that it has been brought to my attention upon contracting with the district, the disparity in terms of hiring, right? So we know that there's a disproportionate number of educators of color versus white educators that are in our schools. And so that is one disparity that is obvious when we walk into the school and look around, right? And that is something that Mr. Hankey has communicated the need to reevaluate a successful plan to recruit and retain teachers of color that reflect the student body, right? So that's an outside perspective in terms of working to support your work, but I'll allow the board to share what those other things may be in terms of disparities.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the disparities, Yolanda. And I do agree with Nichelle. I think as a board, it's going to be a process for us to learn and understand those things and those disparities that do happen in our schools. And I just say that just because I've worked in the schools, I graduated from the schools not too long ago. So I do know that some of those things may exist. So my suggestion is maybe that the word understand change. So change to like maybe we know or
Acknowledge.
Yeah.
Acknowledge.
That we acknowledge that the racial disparities are there, and you know it's going to be part of our role moving forward to identify them and put actionable steps behind them to get rid of the disparities so that it is equitable for all of our students. But I think it's going to be a work in progress.
Correct.
And I think, honestly, this is a little off topic, but not too far off topic, where we as a board and administration, it might be helpful for us all to get together and discuss the racial disparities and what actually is going on. I mean, my impression might be completely different than someone else's. And we really need to understand it from the elementary level through the high school level. So, and maybe even bringing people from city council or the mayor in too for that discussion, because you know we are a community.
Yes,
we are the schools, but we're the students.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that, and again, because what it conveys to me is that the board is having a common understanding that this is something that has to be addressed. So you're acknowledging the disparities, and it conveys your commitment to work to better understand these experiences of the racial group so that we can identify strategies to address the existing barriers. And again, the second part of this statement is that it is going to take us examining our own personal journeys and implicit biases, and perhaps a separate work session would need to be, I would need to be involved in a separate work session where I have more time to drill in and to guide that process so that to be able to effectively move forward from an out again from as a consultant is when in doing this work, a couple of things we have to identify also in that and addressing the disparities. But what are some of the equity, the things that we are doing currently to advance equity? And I think that it's important that we understand it, not just because it's written on paper, but what are the actual actionable things that we are doing. So from my research in my short time of working with the district, one thing is that the district has been working to implement practices around restorative justice. And Mr. Hankey and I have had those conversations in terms of restorative justice and discipline. We're working to do the best to look at those numbers and to make sure that students are not being harshly disciplined for behaviors or infractions, and working with them to make sure that they are staying in school and not being expelled. So restorative justice is an equitable practice that's currently underway in the district. In addition, the trauma-informed approach to school discipline. And so I know that there have been trainings in all of the schools on the trauma-informed approach. And so those are two things that I know that the district is doing and has been doing since I came on board, but we need to go a little deeper and identify what those other equitable practices are. And it will require a separate work session or retreat to really dig into those. But again, for the purpose of timing, working to communicate that to our residents in our community as a way of accountability, right?
Yes,
So,
and will that come out in our strategic plan? Some of those practices that are already in place, and then what those next steps are to take those to another level and to address the other racial disparities, other disparities, period.
I absolutely think so. And again, I am, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hankey, I believe that I will be involved in the strategic planning process to help guide the creation of the framework, the equity framework for the district. And with that, we'll dig deep into that, and we'll be able to establish what we want to focus on as an equity framework for Garfield Heights.
At the outset, when I took the position, the strategic plan was something that I wanted to move forward. And one of the four planks, if you want to look at it as a platform, was diversity, equity, and inclusion at the outset. And I know that with COVID-19, things have been put on hold. But as we go forward and we look at restarting the plan, hopefully in July in earnest, that will be a front and center.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of COVID-19, I think along with everything that's happened in our country with these racial injustices, COVID-19 has shown that the racial disparity. And I'm wondering if Ms. Hamilton, if you're part of our COVID task force, and if not, maybe it would be important for you to be part of the task force as we look to open the schools in the fall.
I'm all for that. I think expanding the work of the task force would be a good idea at this point. We've been focusing on some nuts and bolts areas for reopening, but especially given the events of the last couple of weeks, that'd be fine. And Ms. Hamilton, if you're amenable to it, I'll send you an invite to the task force.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So before we move on to the last portion so that you can move on to other business, everyone's in agreement with this paragraph and feels comfortable that the board can commit to this, that it's authentic.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify because I don't want to put anything out that you don't feel is authentic, or that, put out anything that is not, an authentic representation to the community.
Ms. Hamilton, would it
Yes.
be would it be okay if you just email this letter to all the board members? And then
Absolutely.
they could go over the next few days and give their, after digesting everything really quickly
Ne-
tonight, some things maybe that, and then in a few days later, we can get back with you or Mr. Hanky can, or somebody and tell you our feeling on the letter, and then go ahead and, with Mr. Crooks, and then produce it.
Yes.
What's
When you
our
say next
target?
few days, yeah, like how long are we gonna wait to release this statement?
I would like it out by Wednesday because we done waited long enough
Same.
for this meeting.
Same.
So maybe allowing for, what I can do is I can, we go through the last portion. I will make the edits that were referenced. I know Ms. Bailey has been going along doing that as well. Thank you so much. I can, if she can send me this document, I'll put in the additional edits from my notes and send it to you tonight. And then maybe tomorrow by afternoon, if we can have comments and things for Mr. Crooks, he can do the final, approval to have the letter prepared to go out on, I believe, the website and social media, if I'm not mistaken.
So, Yolanda, I can speak for myself. I do feel like I need a few more minutes to look at it and digest it and look at it as a whole. So I can do that and have any additional comments I may have by noon tomorrow. So I
Okay.
know that I'm available to look over it. We've had some very in-depth discussion here today relative. So I feel like personally, any questions I may have was addressed, but I would like to look at the changes and everything as a whole as discussed. But I only need a moment personally. So by noon, I can give an okay to you. So we can get this out as soon as possible, because I do feel like urgency is necessary.
Okay. Okay. Well, lastly, the final paragraph in summary, as we're continuing on this journey, we ask for your support and we encourage each member of the Garfield Heights community to join us during this time of unrest as an opportunity to talk with your families, particularly our children, about embedded injustice and how we can purposefully, peacefully, and compassionately take a stand against racism. These conversations are important to begin the change in our community and our world. Here are some resources below that can help your discussion with your families. So these were websites that were recommended. Mr. Cooks did a great job at providing references. And then there was also a separate document, I believe, that listed out books and things that were more age appropriate to begin dialogue with younger students about, racism and injustice, but in a way that is age appropriate. That would also be included with this. Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this process. Again, I wanted to dissect this paragraph, and as you reflect on it, again, send any suggestions over. And if there's no questions or any other business.
I do have one.
Okay.
I do have one more question. I guess this is to Mr. Hanky. As all this going on and we're actually putting some of these resources out, do our families know that they can reach like our family and civic engagement coordinator if they're having some, trauma related to what's been going on lately and things of that sort? Do they know that where the wraparound that's available from the school district to support any families that are dealing with trauma or anything relative to things? Because the families are, dealing with trauma, watching these protests and things of that sort. So is it somewhere we can land as families in the district to reach out to those resources even over the summer months?
I think that's a fantastic suggestion, Ms. Daniels. And what we'll do is we'll use our various platforms to make them aware of how to get in touch with our family engagement coordinator. I think the other piece of it is coming out with a section with this statement. If the board is, moves forward with the statement about resources, like it's at the end of the letter. I think it'll be important to have those listed as well. And what we can do is we'll have the contact information for Ms. Wilson put up prominently on the website.
And Mr.
Okay, thank
Hanky,
you.
is Ms. Wilson a year-round employee?
She is
So-
not. However, certainly if there are other issues that fall outside of the scope of her calendar, we will respond. We'll get an appropriate person to respond.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if there was a gap that,
There- Yeah,
You had
there,
someone
there is, but we will, with between myself and Ms. Hamilton, I think we can come up with a way to reach out to families that'll be appropriate in that absence.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. Thank you
Thank
for,
you, Ms. Hamilton.
And I want to thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
for all the effort you put into this.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
It was
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
effort. Thank you. I'll log off now.
Okay, thank you,
Bye.
Ms. Hamilton.
Welcome.
Sherry, can we go on pause first or we good now?
You just need to call for the executive session, I believe, right, Mr. Saluka?
Yes.
No, there was a couple other things
Oh.
we discussed in open session. I want to, if we can mute and I could ask the board if they want to do this now or after executive session. Without going into specific items. Is that possible?
No, if it's not part of executive session, I don't think.
No, that's not what I meant. I want to know, get the board's input. If they want to discuss, there's like 3 topics to discuss. You want
Can
to
we
do it?
just do it now?
Yeah,
We can do
Just
it now
do
if
it
you want.
now.
Yep,
I
we
think
can do it
just
now.
leave After executive session.
Okay, this will take real quick. Miss Nichelle gave me this thing with Deborah Keys White Board Retreat Consultant. And I would like to know if the board would want to give her a presentation. Her fee is $4,050 for 9 hours plus transportation, hotel costs and meals. If we want to bring her in just to have her address the board, that's fine. And the other one was Ms. Thomas gave me, sent to me and Mr. Hanky, a person from Organometrics, and maybe you can respond a little bit on that, Ashley and Nichelle.
I can go first. So,
Sure.
as part of, as we were talking about doing a new board retreat, I thought it was very important for the board to, really review our board our goals as a board, even prior to us moving forward with the strategic plan, because that will be a good baseline, for us to support. And one of the inner ring board presidents recommended Miss Wright Keys and said that she does a lot of work with the inner ring superintendents group and districts around us as far as board retreat governance and help setting up goals. In particular, she really knows our area, and she's worked with districts surrounding us, and she also is very well aware of and will be, I believe, a good resource to support us and even building that pillar with the diversity and equity goals surrounding that with our board. I would suggest that we maybe invite her to a board meeting to present to us and explain to us exactly what she does prior to making a decision on hiring her. She was just a recommendation from another board member. I didn't want to step on the board president's toes by getting too
Oh, you're
much
not. Trust me.
information. Yeah, so I didn't want to, I wanted to follow proper protocol. So I didn't garner a lot of concrete information. I just wanted to make the introduction to the board.
And I appreciate it. Mr. Hanky, do you know anything about Ms. Wright? Being with
No, at least currently, she doesn't have an affiliation with the First Ring Superintendents Collaborative. I believe that, as Ms. Daniels said, she has worked with other local districts in the First Ring for board facilitations.
Okay. And I'll schedule that for the next board meeting, if that's okay with the rest of the board. And Ms. Thomas, you're up.
yeah. So Dale Johnson, he is a VP for Organometrics. same as Michelle, I didn't get really deep into the organization and what they do. I just wanted to, he asked for a presentation. He has been in tune with a few of our board meetings and a few of the things that we have going on in the district. And he feels like he could really offer some good information to us even before we get into the strategic plan about alignment. And I do have 2 printouts that I could send to the entire board, but his request was as well just to have a Zoom session with either Chris to talk more about what him and his organization does. They're actually based out of Minneapolis, but they have a lot of connections in Ohio. So again, just requesting a presentation if that would be at a board meeting or just with Chris. It's completely up to you guys.
Whatever the board wants. You just want Mr. Hanky to have a talk with him and get back to the board? You want him to present?
Yeah, just, and Ms. Thomas, I did just look briefly on his site. They're endorsed by the American Association of Superintendents. So they're obviously pretty deeply involved with schoolwork. And I'd be happy to meet with them if the board would like to, that'd be fine as well.
I think if we could invite them both in for a short presentation, even if it were on the same day, I would be okay with that.
You want to do it at the June meeting or July meeting? Or you want to do it at one of our workshops?
I think June would be okay.
June.
Yeah, because we need to
That's
get the
good,
ball
because we need
rolling
to
on
work on the
everything.
strategic plan, so.
Okay, the June meeting, and we'll get them both. Ms. Thomas, you want to handle setting that up?
Yep, I will.
And Ms. Thomas, would you like to handle that, setting it up?
Ms. Daniels,
I mean, Daniels, I'm sorry.
yes,
If you could get a hold of her and tell her that, I believe our meeting is next Monday, June 15th.
That's correct.
yeah, because the guy from Orgometrics, actually, I'm actually sitting on another panel, which he is the consultant for. I'm actually sitting on this nationwide panel that's dealing with the education opportunity gap post COVID-19, and they're coming up with strategies to submit to the United States Department of Education to look at education differently. So I've actually had the opportunity. I've been sitting on this panel, I think, for the last 5 weeks, these meetings, and it's superintendents, consultants from all over the United States. It's very, some very good work that they're doing. And I've seen his, seen what he's been able to bring to them. They give a really good snapshot of what, even some of the things we're talking about, racial disparities and stuff like that. They do really good with that. It's amazing. So I'm looking forward to having him.
Does it sound like we should just bring the Orgometrics guy in, or both?
Both, I think, give both of them an opportunity to present, and then we can make a decision, because the Orgometrics guy may be able to. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ashley, what'd you say?
I think they do 2 completely different things. So I
Okay.
think bringing them both in.
Okay, so Ms. Thomas, you'll set it up,
I got it.
and Ms. Daniels, you'll set up the other one?
Yes, I will, sir.
Okay, 10 to 15-minute presentation should be good enough, no?
Yep.
Then the last thing we go in before,
President Juby, can I just piggyback real quick? I
You can put it-
apologize. Okay. Suzanne Miklos, is in charge of OE strategies, who we contracted, the board contracted with our strategic plan, does have dates open in July. If you want to piggyback, these efforts all together and re-kick off the strategic plan effort. That's just a point for the board to digest in terms of a possible retreat or something, but she is amenable to being there. Obviously, we were just weeks away from having our kickoff meeting, and we want to restart the process.
okay. All right,
Before we go
last-
to executive,
Oh.
I just had a question. Would you be able to, Mr. Hanky, at our next meeting next week, just give us a summary of what happened the last quarter with the COVID and
Mhm.
just an update, a COVID status update?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No problem.
Great, thanks.
All right.
What I will do is I will make that the focus of my board report, if that sounds all right.
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
That sounds
Okay.
good to me.
And I didn't forget about you, Miss Tucker. I think it was 2-3 meetings ago with the passing of Charlie Anderson, we said we wanted to do something. And I agree with Miss Tucker. It's time to, instead of just prolonging it, to figure out what we're gonna do. And I think the 5 ideas were a tree, a Hall of Fame induction, a plaque, a superfan proclamation, or a name tag on a seat for the superfan. So if, just for discussion, if you can get back to me tomorrow,
Let's
we can
decide
decide
now.
right now.
Let's decide now.
Okay.
I'll start off. I like the idea of a plaque and also putting a little nameplate on the seat where he sat. Well, he didn't really sit, where he laid his coat.
His area.
In the gym, his area, everyone knows his area, to put a nameplate there and maybe put a plaque out in the, by one of the concession stands or out where some of the other plaques are located out in the hall area. Those are my ideas.
I can agree with those too.
I agree.
I'm gonna agree with you, Ashley. I wanted a tree.
Is there a place where we could have, I would do all 5. I mean, I have no problem with any of them. But is there a place we could start like a garden or an area where we could plant trees or?
A memorial
like that.
garden.
So
Memorial
there
garden.
is, let me tell you guys. So there is a community garden that we were going to get rid of. It's called High Court Garden. It's on McCracken and 131st near Silver, and they were actually going to get rid of it this season. And there's a group of people who are working to bring that garden back to life. So I'm sure if we wanted to plant Charlie a tree there, they would, oh my God, they would probably love it because these are.
Well, you know what? This is something I could get into because I love gardening and stuff. So I would, yeah, if there's a way we could do that, I mean, I could.
Okay.
Yes.
do it,
I'll connect y'all.
whatever. Okay. If everyone's agreeing, it is whether it's a bush or a tree,
So a
or
tree it is?
plaque or whatever.
I think
y'all
we
think
can
is
do the
better.
tree in the community garden and then do the plaque in the seat.
Yep, we could do that.
Al, where would we put this plaque at?
Well, I thought the talk was outside on the, by the concession stand, but I also think that at wherever the football games were, I think Charlie was standing along the fence in most of those games. I mean, we could put the plaque at his place at the fence where people
Let's
stand.
not put anything out there.
Okay, I know where the seat is, so the hard part with putting a plaque, I'm going to say this in the HPE, is because most of those walls are for the Hall of Fame plaques and dedication, and you really don't want to mix the two up, kind of, because I think it gets
Gotcha.
lost somewhere. If you want
So
to,
you
I'm
want
not
to go
sure.
with the tree at the memorial garden and then a name tag by a seat? Is that
could
good
do that.
enough?
I'm
Or
okay
how
with that.
can we do a super fan recognition at the concession stand inside?
I thought he was mostly at basketball. I think we should probably, if we have basketball, do a special game where we dedicate the seat and acknowledge him as a super fan and have a moment of silence.
Have a
Maybe the-
proclamation for him? Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good idea. Al.
Yep.
And
That's
that
it.
way we could acknowledge a moment of silence and acknowledge where the seat was and everything.
Sounds good.
I like it.
We all good now?
We all good.
All right. It is recommended the board enter to an executive session at 7 PM to discuss the evaluation of personnel and negotiations.
Slow
Is there a
move.
motion?
Second,
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Kitson,
yes.
Mrs. Daniels,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Mr. Juvie.
Yes.
Secretary, you're gonna have to put down, stop the YouTube, if you would.
Don't she put us in the room?
Yeah, you usually put us what in the,
I'm putting you in the room right now.
okay.
Joy.
Hello.
Hi,
I'm
can you hear
adding
me?
I'm adding you to the room now.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Here we go.
I did that pretty good. All right, is there anything else before we adjourn? Yeah, a motion to adjourn at 8:39.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call.
Mrs. Kitson,
Yes.
Mrs. Daniels,
yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Tucker,
Yes.
Mr. Juby.
Yes, we will see you all next week at 5:30 for our meeting, our community meeting for the calendar, correct? Public meeting?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone have a
Everybody
good
have a
rest of
good
the week.
night.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Night.
Okay.
See you.